In this part of the curriculum, we're going to figure out how to create a new project inside of Android Studio, and then we'll talk about some of the important files and directories within that project. So if you already have an active project open, then you can actually just go to New Project under the File menu. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Close Project, which should bring me to the main screen of Android Studio, where most people will be starting from. And from here, what you want to select is Start a New Android Studio Project. In this case, what we're going to select is Add No Activity over here, then click Next. And for the name of the application, we're going to call it Hello World. Now, for the package name, as you can see, it's automatically generated. Generally speaking, what you'll be doing is if you have something like a website or some kind of unique identifier, then you'll want to use that as the package name. And we'll talk about this more later on, but basically, whatever package name you upload an application to, say, Google Play to, you will need to keep that package name the same if you want to continue to update that particular project. So the package name is pretty important, and one of its primary purposes is to provide a unique identifier for your application. The save location is, of course, the place where, or the directory in which the project will be created. You can select whatever you like, and make sure you select Kotlin for the language. As mentioned before, if you select a minimum API of 21, then you're going to cover approximately 85% of devices. Generally speaking, for beginners, I do suggest you select either API 21 or something higher. So it isn't especially important for the purposes of this tutorial, but in production applications, I do prefer to have this box here checked, use Android X artifacts, and this basically changes where you're downloading your dependencies from. Now, if you have no idea what that means, don't worry about it, and you can leave it checked or unchecked. Doesn't really matter too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then I'm going to hit Finish. So, as you can see here, I've created a new project in Android Studio called Hello World, and the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up the Project Explorer. Now, if for some reason this tab is hidden, very often you can open it by hitting Alt-1. And if you see like a number beside the particular tab, then you can use the Alt key in order to open it. So once you have the Project Explorer open, which is this window here, the very first thing I'd like you to do is to hit the drop-down menu and then select just Project Files. This effectively changes what the Project Explorer looks like, and it gives you the most accurate representation. So before we proceed, we need to nail down a couple of definitions. So an Android project essentially refers to all of the files contained within the root folder of your Android project. So this will include files which are generated by the IDE. So for example, you have like the IDEA folder here. App, as we'll see in a moment, is generally speaking where most of the coding will actually go on, but that can change a little bit depending on if you're doing a multi-module project or not. So if the contents of our Hello World folder, our root folder here, constitutes an Android project, what constitutes an Android application is essentially a compiled version of the different files that you'll see in here. Now obviously we won't use all of the files. So what does compilation mean? It basically means taking the code that we write in more human readable languages such as Java or Kotlin or XML, and then turning that into JVM bytecode. The way that this process is achieved is by actually building the application, which you can do by hitting or going up to the build option here and then hitting make project. So something you may be wondering is how Android Studio is able to basically work with and compile together applications which are made entirely in Kotlin, entirely in Java, or some mixture of both. So the key to this process is that both Kotlin and Java are capable of being compiled to the JVM, Java Virtual Machine, and the Java Virtual Machine interprets what is known as JVM bytecode. So how this process is achieved is basically Android Studio uses compilers. So we have the Java compiler and the Kotlin compiler, that's what the C stands for. And what it'll do is it'll feed both our Kotlin source files and our Java source files, so source files being the things that we write, through both compilers like so. Now, I'm actually simplifying this process somewhat, but ultimately, by feeding these different files through both the Kotlin compiler and the Java compiler, the different source files will be able to talk to each other, and ultimately everything gets compiled by the compiler. So compiling basically means going from Kotlin or Java into bytecode in this case, something that the computer can understand a little easier. Ultimately, everything gets compiled to Java bytecode.